Hello, everyone, and welcome to this North Carolina Botanical Garden Lunchbox Talk. I'm Joanna Massey-Lalikas, and I'm the Director of Learning and Community Engagement here at the Garden. And I'm joined today in the Zoom by Lauren Green, and she'll be out there to help answer any technical questions that might come up with Zoom, and will be assisting our speaker today with polls and Q&A. And I'm excited to share we have folks tuning in online from across North Carolina, as well as from Virginia, Pennsylvania, Illinois, and California. So we really thank all of you for being here. Now I would like to take the opportunity to introduce you to our speaker today. In her role as a certified forest therapy guide, Raleigh-based Shawn Ramsey is committed to facilitating experiences that open the senses and enhance a feeling of connection through a series of nature-inspired invitations. Her unique approach draws from her training in forest therapy, mindfulness, and positive psychology coaching. She believes that nature is the perfect catalyst for stress management, growth, and exploration, and a powerful ally when it comes to supporting our physical and emotional well-being. Thank you for being with us today, Shawn.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Let me pull my presentation up. There we go. Hi, everyone. I am Shawn Ramsey, as Joanna mentioned. I'm a certified forest therapy guide, and it's truly an honor to do this presentation for you all today. I'd like to thank Joanna, Lauren, and the rest of the North Carolina Botanical Garden for offering this opportunity to share forest therapy with all of you today. And I'd like to thank each of you for joining us. So thank you so much. In today's presentation, we'll learn about the origins and benefits of forest therapy. We'll talk about the science behind the practice. I'll talk about how you can practice with a guide and on your own, and we'll go into a little more detail about each of those. First, I thought it might be helpful to share a little bit about myself and how I've ended up here as a forest therapy guide. I grew up in West Virginia, and I was lucky enough to, as a child, have access to land and woods to play in, and, really had a deep connection with nature from the very beginning. And, I do want to share that my family actually suffered a significant trauma during my childhood. And the woods in particular were the place where I found peace and sanctuary. And they were also the place where I could let my imagination run wild. And they were the place where I saw proof every day that magic really existed all around us. Like many of us, I kind of lost that connection as I grew up and, or lost it somewhere along the way. But fortunately, I've been, able to reconnect with nature on a different level as an adult. And I'm happy to share, that connection with each and every one of you. So thank you again for joining me today. Again, just a little more detail about what we'll be discussing today. We'll be talking about what exactly forest therapy and forest bathing mean. And you'll notice that I use those phrases interchangeably, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. We'll talk about the origins of forest therapy. We'll talk about the science behind the practice and the benefits of the practice. I'll guide you through a virtual forest therapy experience. We'll talk about what to expect in an actual in-person experience. I'll talk about the role of a guide like myself, and I'll offer advice on how to practice on your own. And then I'll give you a sneak peek at, forest therapy opportunities that should be coming to the North Carolina Botanical Garden soon. So one practice, many names. As I mentioned, or as you've probably noticed, I have used forest bathing and forest therapy interchangeably. Shinrin-yoku is another term used to describe this practice, as is forest immersion. So we'll start by talking a little bit about the history of forest bathing. I mentioned the term Shinrin-yoku. That actually is because the practice started in Japan. It was actually a practice that started in the 1980s by the US or by the Japanese government. They started it as a practice to help their residents really benefit from what nature had to offer. They noticed as more and more Japanese residents moved into an urban environment from more of a rural environment, that they were experiencing health issues that they simply hadn't experienced before. They were experiencing both physical health issues and emotional and mental health issues. And so the government started this practice in hopes that the residents would be able to improve the health of their health, and also inspire them to reconnect with and protect the country's forests. So Shinrin-yoku literally means forest bathing, or taking in the forest atmosphere. And forest therapy is now a global wellness practice. It's a movement that is experiencing rapid growth in the health and wellness field, but it's actually still pretty new here in the US. Fortunately for us, it is starting to build momentum. So I'm happy to help, to be part of that movement. Whoops, jumping ahead, apologize. So I'd like to hand it over to Laura for a moment as she shares these polling questions. And the first question is, have you noticed or have you heard of forest therapy, aka forest bathing, prior to today's talk? I'd love to get your feedback there. So we see that 80% of you have heard of forest therapy. That's exciting. I'm glad to hear that. And that probably explains why you're interested in learning more about it. So thank you guys for sharing that insight. And for those of you that haven't heard of forest therapy in the past, I really appreciate you joining us today to learn more. So I see that 100% of you, so that's very exciting, have noticed mental or physical health benefits of spending time in nature. So it's wonderful to see that there are many kindred spirits here on today's presentation or today's Zoom call. So thank you so much for sharing that. And the follow-up question, if you have experienced benefits, what benefits have you experienced while spending time in nature? So thank you guys for taking the time to answer those questions. And Lauren, can we see any of their answers?
I can read some off to you.
Yeah, that would be great.
Felt calmer and more at peace. I'm seeing lots of calming, relaxation, fascination, clearing mind clutter, freedom of thought, problem solving while walking in forest, clearing my head, wonder, beauty, calm, sense of calm, ironically help with allergies.
Oh, wow. All right. And I might share some explanations behind that. But thank you so much for taking the time to answer those questions and for sharing a little bit about your experience spending time in nature. So as you've seen, 100% of you said that you had experienced some type of benefits. So we obviously are not alone. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the reasons behind that. So, from a holistic well-being standpoint, forest therapy has benefits when it comes to mindfulness, has benefits when it comes to connection, has benefits when it comes to physical well-being, as well as psychological well-being. So, and there's a lot of science behind each and every one of these. And I am not sharing those resources today as part of today's presentation, but if you're interested in learning more, I can certainly share some of those resources. But, I will say there's a ton of scientific-based evidence out there that spending time in nature has numerous benefits in each of these categories. So we're going to talk a little bit more about each of those. So I love this quote about mindfulness. Mindfulness is keeping our heads and hearts where our bodies are. And forest therapy is all about helping you make that mind, heart, and body connection. And again, we'll talk more about that connection as well. But a little bit more, actually, I jumped ahead and I apologize. So a little bit more detail about mindfulness. It sounds like most of you are probably familiar with the concept of mindfulness, but forest therapy is considered a mindfulness practice, much like meditation. Actually, meditation is a component of forest therapy, as you'll see in a bit. In its essence, mindfulness brings awareness to the fullness of the experience. It expands the mind, fills the heart, and reconnects us with life, which is exactly what forest therapy is all about. Being mindful in nature specifically has the capacity to awaken our senses. It helps drop us into more of an embodied experience, and it invites in wonder and awe, which I think some of you mentioned when you talked about the benefits of spending time in nature. So. And physical well-being. There's a long list of physical benefits from spending time in forest therapy, and I'm happy to share, more follow-up about these if you're interested. But some of the benefits that have been demonstrated from scientific research include boosted immunity, which might explain the allergies. There's actually reduced inflammation, reduced stress, which is actually measured by lower cortisol levels. It's been shown to stabilize blood pressure. So if your blood pressure is low, it helps stabilizes it. If your blood pressure is high, it can help stabilize that. It also has shown to increase heart variability, which is an indicator of cardiovascular health. It helps improve sleep. It helps deactivate the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight mechanism, and helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest state of mind. Also helps regulate blood sugar. So I'm going to share a little bit more about some of the reasons behind that. Whoops, I jumped ahead again, and I apologize. My mouse is being super sensitive today. So this is where I start to geek out a little bit. I get super excited about sharing information about these compounds called phytoncides. They are actually tree essential oils that have medicinal properties. The trees use those to protect themselves. They're kind of like the tree's own immune system. So they actually use them to protect themselves from bugs and bacteria and disease and other pests. And amazingly, phytoncides actually are chemicals that encourage natural kill cells. I cannot talk, sorry. Natural killer cells, NK cell activity, both in the tree itself and in the human body. And those chemicals are cancer-fighting proteins that literally seek and destroy tumors and virus-ridden cells. And you'll see the little chart I included over here. This goes into, more detail, but it really shares insights into some of the specific phytoncides. So there's beta pionine, there's alpha pionine, there's beta myrcene, there's camphene, there's limazine. So again, I'm not going to go into detail about all of these, but I just wanted to share a little bit about this. So, again, the trees use these phytoncides to protect themselves, and we're very fortunate that the trees share them with us. So if you have ever been out in the forest and smelled maybe a pine tree or a cedar tree, or even if you've used essential oils and maybe, again, a pine oil or a cedar wood or, even something like Palo Santo. All of those are examples of phytoncides. So if you haven't tried phytoncides to see what kind of effect they have on you, that may be something you want to explore a little further. But I think this is one of the most amazing things. And I love when I'm out in nature, when I'm leading a group on a forest therapy experience and we walk from one area to the other and we start to smell the phytoncides in the air. So I hope you guys will think about that the next time you're out in the woods and smell, some of our lovely and amazing pine trees we are fortunate to have all around us. So. And psychological or emotional well-being is definitely one of the benefits of forest therapy. Overall, forest therapy has been proven to improve mental health, which includes reduced anxiety and depression. It's also been shown to improve self-esteem. It's been shown to improve moods, and that's actually been measured by something called the Profile of Mood States. POMS is the acronym for that. It's actually a psychological rating scale used to assess transient distinct mood states. So there are research studies out there that really demonstrate that participants have seen improvement in their mood states following spending time in nature. There's also improved concentration, which I think somebody mentioned earlier, increased creativity. There's a fostered understanding of interdependence, and there's increased feeling of social connection and empathy, as well as in some cases, an improved spiritual well-being. There's also a direct link between soil and serotonin, which is our happiness hormone. So when we smell the dirt, as most gardeners know, and there may be some gardeners in today's group, we also take in that specific microbacterium found in the soil, the leaf litter, and the compost. And that's all found in the forest floor. And that has been linked to higher levels of serotonin, which, as I mentioned, is a mood-enhancing hormone. So the trees make us healthy and the soil makes us happy. A sense of connection is really something I want to talk about as well. You know, that's something that a lot of people struggle with in today's technology age. And I know that the pandemic and, you know, the shutdown that a lot of us experienced really exacerbated, you know, that loss of connection. So forest therapy is, you know, about intentionally connecting with nature. It also helps us connect more with ourselves and the people and our environment around us. The awareness experienced during forest therapy has the potential to open the heart and help you, you know, hold regard and compassion for yourself, for others, and for the natural world. The bottom line is that we typically feel more alive and connected when we slow down and embrace the present moment with our heart, mind, and body. As I mentioned, these experiences also help facilitate a connection directly with nature itself. And that actually has an environmental and an ecosystem impact. As Jacques Cousteau says, people protect what they love. So one of my intentions in being a forest therapy guide is not only to help you tap into the benefits that the forest has to offer, but hopefully help facilitate that connection and ignite your passion for, you know, the natural world and, you know, hopefully ignite a passion to help you protect it as well. So that's important to me. Thank you. So now I am going to, if it's okay with you, I'd like to walk you through a little visualization forest bathing exercise. This obviously isn't going to be exactly like doing an in-person forest therapy experience out in the woods, but it's meant to give you an idea of what that experience might be like. If you happen to have a natural element nearby, I know that that was mentioned in the original program description and the email that went out. So if you happen to have a stone or a leaf or a piece of wood, having that in your hands can actually enhance this experience that I'm going to guide you through. So I'd like for each of you to, you know, be seated in a relaxed and comfortable position, whatever that means for you. If it's sitting, if it's lying, if it's standing, whatever works for you. So basically just settle in and get comfortable. As you start to settle in, I encourage you to just breathe naturally and gently. As you feel comfortable, I encourage you to softly close your eyes or soften your gaze. As you breathe in and out, feel your mind and body slowly relax. With each outward breath, allow your muscles to relax just a little bit more. With your eyes closed or your gaze softened, imagine that you are sitting comfortably on the soft forest floor next to a beautiful tree. You feel comfortable at ease as the sun shines down on you. The light in the forest cascades down through the leaves in a soft spray of light. Notice the ferns, the moss, and the trees reaching towards the light. The upper canopy of the trees covers you like a stained glass spray of light. The light green leaves against the light blue and white sky create a soft, glowing, ambient light. The light is gentle and soothing. You feel a breeze blow through the trees, but you are sheltered in your spot. The air around you is calm. You hear a stream trickling in the distance. You hear different birds calling from all around you. And you hear the sound of the gentle breeze as it flutters through the leaves on the trees. With your next breath in, you take in the scents of the forest. Perhaps smelling hints of cedar or pine. With your next few breaths, try losing yourself a little more in the beauty of the forest that surrounds you. Now place one hand on your heart as you imagine reaching the other hand out to touch the tree next to you. Feel the bark of the tree. Is it smooth? Is it coarse? Is it cool or is it warm? Feel your own heartbeat and breath slow even more as it starts to match that of the tree. Spend a few minutes just breathing with the tree. As you sit with your tree, ask it if it has any messages or gifts it would like to share with you. Or any lessons that you can learn. Spend a few minutes appreciating the gifts or the messages you have been given. After you rest for a while, enjoying your surroundings, you decide that you're ready to leave this beautiful forest. But know that you can visit again anytime you wish, whether in person or in your imagination. As you prepare to leave the forest, take a moment to thank the tree for any messages or gifts you may have received. And thank the forest for this beautiful experience. Now slowly feel yourself coming back together here with the rest of us in Zoom. Start to wiggle your fingers and your toes. Gently open your eyes and return to your awareness when you're ready. And I can't see your faces, so I'm hoping that all of you are back to joining us here in Zoom. And now that I've kind of put everyone to sleep, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Obviously, this virtual experience is not quite like or exactly like a real forest therapy experience, but I hope that it gives you an idea of what it's like to maybe open your awareness, to enhance your senses, and, get a feeling for what it's like to be, in an embodied experience. Inspired by the forest. So if anybody would like to share a little bit about maybe what they experienced as part of this virtual experience, please share that in the chat room. I didn't include that as a polling question, but would love to have you share anything you feel compelled to share. Oops. And now that we've talked about, or we've gone through a virtual forest therapy experience, I thought it might be helpful to tell you a little bit more about what to expect in a real live forest therapy experience. So the forest therapy experiences are typically between 2 to 2.5 hours. It's typically a mile or less of a walk. This is not a fitness hike by any means. It's basically an opportunity. It should be a peaceful walk, a mindful walk. We will gather in a predetermined location. We'll have a meet and greet where you have an opportunity to meet the other participants and learn more about the whole process. We'll choose sit spots. And sit spots are basically just places that you choose to sit or rest comfortably in the forest environment. And when I talk about forest environments, that can be an actual forest, or it can be a location like the botanical garden there at the North Carolina Botanical Garden there at Chapel Hill. We do live, a lot of us live in a very urban environment, and it's easy to think that you might not have access to a real forest and may not be able to benefit from what a forest environment has to offer. But we're very fortunate here in the Triangle area in particular, and in North Carolina in general, that we have access to so many amazing parks. And in some cases, a location like the Botanical Garden can be a little less intimidating and a little more inviting. It can feel a little less risky and maybe a little safer for some participants. So it's a great way for them to feel comfortable connecting with nature when they might not feel as comfortable doing so in a forest environment. But once we choose our sit spots, I will walk the participants through a sensory awakening meditation. And it's kind of similar to what I just did for you guys, but obviously it's live and in person. And we really tap into our senses and tap into what's happening all around us. So, one of the things that I hear a lot of participants talk about is, they start to hear things that they hadn't heard before. They start to smell things that they hadn't heard before. They really just tap into those senses that they might not otherwise. And they start to experience their surroundings in a whole different way, a much deeper way, which leads to invitations to connect. So I'll talk a little bit more about those invitations in a minute. Then we typically come together. So as part of the invitations, actually, I send the participants out for about 10 or 15 minutes to have their own experience. And, what they experience during that invitation is really unique, and it's specifically meant for them. One of the things as a guide I need to remind myself of is that, I need to keep my expectations out of your experience. So while I have, ideas about what a forest therapy experience could be like, and, have experience about what I have, experienced in the forest and what other participants have experienced, I really make a strong effort not to let my expectations interfere with your experience. I'm basically here to facilitate that connection. And I have to trust that, you will get what you need from that experience. So each invitation is for you to experience however you see fit. And invitations are just that. They are not mandatory by any stretch. You have an opportunity to decline that invitation. And if you feel called or drawn to do something different, as long as it's safe and doesn't interfere with the forest therapy experience for the group, then I encourage you to do that as well. But once we come back from the invitations, we typically, whoops, I am jumping way ahead. We typically come back to share. And again, there's no pressure to share. If you want to share, you're welcome to do that. If you choose not to, that's perfectly fine too. And then at the end of my forest therapy experiences, I typically have a tea ceremony. And the tea ceremony is intended to honor the earth, to honor the forest, to honor those who have, called that forest home before us, or are currently called the forest home, that are sharing that experience with us, and also to honor ourselves for showing up and, choosing to connect with nature in this way. And I have to say that the tea ceremony is something that people really seem to enjoy. And, all of this gives them an opportunity to slow down and appreciate things in a way they might not otherwise. And, it's just something we don't give ourselves permission to do enough. So again, what a forest therapy experience is not, it's not a naturalist hike, although we may talk about some of the elements of nature along the way. It's not a fitness hike. It's basically an opportunity to spend time mindfully among the trees and together in community. So as a forest therapy guide, I try to offer periods of focused attention throughout the experience. I try to, offer or create or facilitate moments of connection through the sensory awareness meditation, as I mentioned, through the invitations, through the tea, and through the experience as a whole. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about invitations, and thought this quote was appropriate. The times are urgent. Let us slow down. It is the invitations that are now in the world at large, inviting us to listen deeply, to be keen, to be fresh, to be quick with our heels, to follow the sights and sounds and smells of the world. And I chose that quote because invitations are created to help you tap into those senses. Again, they're invitations to connect with nature, But when I craft these invitations, I try to think about your, I focus on awareness and your senses. So I try to craft invitations. One may focus on sight, one may focus on sound, one may focus on touch, one may focus on imagination. So I try to incorporate at least 3 invitations into every experience, and to really help you tap into multiple senses as part of the experience. And those sensory invitations can elicit an emotional response. It could be something as simple as smelling the flowers can make you happy. They can, also indirectly prompt emotion. For example, wander out and notice if something brings a smile to your face. But again, it's an opportunity to connect with nature and kind of tap into something that we don't normally tap into, or spend time mindfully connecting with something in nature. I also, as I craft the invitations for each experience, I also take into consideration kind of the landscape of the area, what natural elements are there surrounding us. I think about lighting, the time of day, or the shade in a particular area. I think a lot about the seasons. So in the fall, I did a lot of forest therapy experiences with a theme of transition. Fall is a big time of transition. So a lot of the invitations were crafted to kind of focus on that, looking for signs of transition, signs of rebirth, signs of rest, etc. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my role as a forest therapy guide. So as your forest therapy guide, whether it's me or another forest therapy guide, we typically are responsible for choosing a trail or a location. We're typically responsible for setting the pace of the experience. We are responsible for cultivating awareness as much as possible through the flow of the experience. We offer the invitations, as I mentioned. We try to facilitate that connection, as we've talked about. And I try to hold space for the experience as a whole and for the group as a whole. I'm also there to kind of share in the joy of being and to help you do the same. And while there are benefits of working with a guide and a forest therapy experience, there's also there are ways for you to practice on your own, and some of you may have already done that. So if you'd like to practice forest therapy on your own, I really encourage you to find a safe sit spot. That's important for you to be aware of your surroundings. If you're meditating or, resting, it's easy to kind of not be aware of your surroundings, which is one of the roles that a guide can play when you're there as part of a forest therapy experience. But just, as you're choosing a sit spot, really, be aware of the location, aware of your surroundings, and make sure that you feel safe and comfortable there. Take the opportunity to focus on your awareness and your senses. There are opportunities for you to maybe craft some invitations of your own and take them with you. Also, you might want to do some slow, mindful movement, maybe some meditative walking, or something along those lines. Also, look for opportunities to connect with intention. So again, connecting with a tree, connecting with a plant, connecting with the sun or the leaves, or, something that's part of your environment. The earth beneath your feet, for example. Connecting with a leaf or a stone or something like that as well is helpful, as I mentioned earlier. You might also think about looking for opportunities to express gratitude and having a journal with you so that you can kind of, spend a few minutes kind of thinking about your experience and what that meant to you. One of the loveliest things that some of my participants have shared with me as part of these experiences, as I've had a few go off and do invitations, and they've actually been inspired to write a poem because of that. And it's always really, really, really lovely when they come back and share that with the group or share that with me later. So that's really meaningful for me and I think for them. So I really appreciate that. So now that you've learned a little bit about, hopefully you've gotten a taste of forest therapy if you haven't done it in the past, although it sounds like most of you have. You have a taste of what a formal forest therapy experience might be like. And then, so based on what you've learned today or what you've experienced in the past, this polling question is, would you be interested in doing a forest therapy experience here at the North Carolina Botanical Garden in the new year? So thank you guys for taking time to respond. It looks like quite a few of you would be interested in participating in a forest therapy experience. And then for those of you who aren't, I hope you find other ways to continue connecting with nature in the way that works for you. But for those of you interested in doing a forest therapy experience at the Botanical Garden, we're in the process of scheduling forest therapy sessions starting in the spring. So I encourage you guys to look for those announcements coming soon. And I'm sure those will be promoted via social media and in the newsletter. And they'll also be listed under the Botanical Gardens programs and events under the adult programs. So I really encourage you to look for those. And again, we'll be scheduling those soon and making announcements about those as soon as possible. So I do want to go back and look at some of the questions because I know you guys have shared questions along the way, and I apologize that I wasn't able to answer them throughout the presentation. So I'm looking back through them now. I noticed that a couple of you are excited about participating in the forest therapy sessions and appreciate that you shared, that the short virtual experience that I facilitated really helped transport you from the coffee shop you're in into the forest setting, which I appreciate. I see a few of you here are interested in having me do something virtual, which is certainly something that I can explore with Lauren, Joanna, and David there at the Botanical Gardens. If you feel this virtual experience is effective, and we can certainly find ways to do that out in a forest environment, as long as I, know that I can have a secure connection and can control the environment to some extent. And if you have any other questions about the experience, please share those. We still have time for a little Q&A as we finish up here. And again, we will be doing these forest therapy experiences here at the Botanical Gardens. I also am available to do events for corporations and organizations, nonprofit organizations, for example, and also to do private groups as well. So I've included my contact information here on this last slide, and know that you could probably get it from somebody at the Botanical Garden as well if you're interested in following up with me. And I think I'm going to turn it over to Joanna and Lauren so they can close us out. But again, if you have questions, please share those and we'll try to get those answered. But I'm going to turn it over to Joanna and Lauren. Thanks so much. I hope it was an enjoyable experience, and I look forward to seeing you all in the forest there at the Botanical Gardens in the spring. Thanks so much. Bye.
Right, and Shawn, we do have a question that just popped up. What was the certification in forest therapy guides like?
Great. That's a great question. There are a couple of different organizations here in the US that do those certifications. Mine was a hybrid program. It was through an organization called the Forest Therapy School, which should be easy to remember. And a lot of it was virtual. And then I had an opportunity to meet one-on-one with my instructor and do in-person forest therapy walks as part of that education process. I believe it was actually, my program was a 16-week program, and it included the educational piece. It included a practicum piece where we had to create forest therapy experiences for people in our local area and really kind of hone our skills. And then there was a lot of research that we studied. We learned about the specific flow, really just understanding, again, our role as a guide, and understanding that, it's our role to facilitate the experience and, make the connection. But the experience you have is really between you and nature. So if you're interested in learning more, about my experience and the education that I had, please feel free to email me and I'd be happy to share more information. So.
And we've
Great.
got
Were there
another
any-
comment in the
All right.
chat of someone just saying that they're looking forward to being a part of your walk here in 2024.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Valerie. I appreciate that. Were there any other questions that I missed? I apologize if I did miss those along the way.
I'm not seeing any other questions, and I don't remember any questions that you missed earlier.
All right, wonderful. Well, again, I know you have my email address. If you have any questions about the education process, about forest therapy in general, or about scheduling a forest therapy session there at the Botanical Gardens or in some other form, please let me know. But again, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to work with the Botanical Gardens and, to get those scheduled soon and to start seeing you guys there in person. So thank you so much.
Well, Shawn, thank you so much. It's been really great to have you with
Well,
us.
thank you guys for having me.
And we look forward to having you offer some of these programs here at the garden in the spring. And this has been a wonderful program. I really enjoyed the little walk into nature from my office today. So
Well, thank you. And, that's a great point, Joanna. I mean, one of the reasons I do that is that so people know that they can tap into this wherever they are. If you're in an office, if you're in your home, we don't always have an opportunity to go out in the forest or out into the woods or even out in a beautiful setting like your botanical gardens. But, I think it's important for people to know that this is available to them no matter where they are.
Perfect. That's so wonderful. Well, thank you again. And thanks everybody for joining us today. It's been wonderful having you all here, and thanks for participating in the polls and the questions and all of that, and the guided programs. So thanks again, everybody, for attending. And I look forward to seeing you at our programs in January.